we're going to dive into, some of you know, my favorite place in the whole wide world. My happy place, if we want to reference the Happy Gilmore old movie with Adam Sandler. My happy place is Alaska. And I've been fishing up there a half dozen times. My dad took me up there when I was young, and we just kept going. And I want to share a lesson of the Alaskan wilderness that I learned that is immediately applicable to everybody listening tonight. When we go fishing, we go to the remote edges of the earth. And I want to walk you through what that looks like here in just a second. We go to this little town called Angoon. Angoon, A-N-G-O-O-N. And it's outside of Juneau. We fly into, to get there from Louisville, you go to Chicago, to Seattle, then you hop up to Juneau by plane. And you've probably never heard of it. But this is Angoon, Alaska right here. Can everybody see Angoon, Alaska? My screen share coming through okay? Raise your hand if the screen share is coming through. I want to make sure before I start talking too much. Here we go. Perfect. Okay, great. So this is Angoon, Alaska. Population 450. This is a little isolated fishing village. To get there, you fly into Juneau, and then you get on a boat, and you go for 4 hours on a boat. Now, you're probably thinking, man, that's remote. Well, we haven't gotten started yet. This little island sits on the inside passage. It's self-sufficient. They have their own water purification, filtration, electric generators, their own sewer system. Everything comes in and leaves by barge. And this is just the base of operations, right? Where we actually go fishing is a little bit more remote. So once you get to Angoon, if you want to go fish, you got to go to where the fish are. So we get on one of these little boats. And we take a 60-minute or so boat ride across the inside passage. Now, this looks all fine and dandy here when I'm taking these pictures coming back at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. At 7 a.m. in the morning, when you're flying across the inside passage at 45 or 50 miles an hour, and the saltwater mist is coming over the boat and the wind is blitzing, it's anything but pleasant. And so to get to the river, you've got to take this 60-minute boat ride across the inside passage. And then you get to the mouth of this river. These pictures were actually taken about 15 years apart. This was the first picture I took when I went up there when I was 14. And this picture was taken a few years ago. You can see the center rock there in both pictures. So then you get to the mouth of this river. You get to the falls. And you run the boat up on shore. And this is actually, if you know about fishing, this is called brackish water, where the freshwater stream mixes with the salt water in the ocean. You get kind of a combination of salt water here, a light saltwater stuff. So you run the boat up on the shore here, you jump out, and you've got waders on because you never get far enough up on the shore to actually stay dry. And we've got canoes on the back of the boat. So we get the canoes off the back of the boat, and you put them over your head, and you hold on to each side, and you start trucking up the shore here because you got to walk over the falls. And you walk through this beautiful, amazing looking forest. These are all real pictures that I've taken. And it's about a half-mile hike up over the falls to get to the lake that's up above this river. And you hike through here. So you're carrying a canoe. You're walking through. In the morning, it's minimal visibility. You've got heavy fog that's pushing down. And a lot of times walking through these woods, you might only be able to see 5 or 10 feet in front of you. So you get up above, you pop out of the woods, and then here's this lake. You pull the canoes out of the woods and throw them in the water, and then you get in the canoes and you start paddling. And generally speaking, depending on where we want to go, there's a couple different tributaries at this particular place. We got a canoe a mile or two up the lake to get to the little tributary streams. And that's where the fun begins. You can catch some little trout and stuff in here, but the good fishing, the really good fishing is up the lake, up the little tributary streams where it starts to really, really narrow down. And when you really get up there, this is some of the stuff that you start catching. You start catching 15 and 20 pound chum salmon. Here's my dad, Dr. Ron, with a monster of a pink salmon here. Here I took this picture just to show you what the chompers in these guys look like. And it's all caught on light tackle. It's all fantastic. But realize when we're fishing up there, we're not the only predator that's also enjoying catching these salmon. This is also what's up there catching these salmon. If you've never seen a brown bear in real life, these guys are fast. They're really fast. And they'll pop out of the tree line. They're 20 or 30 feet from you. And we've come across mothers with a couple cubs running around. And, you know, they might be wandering around the other side of the stream. And I always wondered, what do you do if one of these bears decides that you look like a nice little meal? And one of the times we were up there, I asked the guide, I said, you know, all the guides up there that we go with carry pistols. They don't carry, you know, 416 Rigby's and 375, if you know anything about rifles and hunting and all that. They're not carrying big bear stopping rifles, right? The monster, like African type guns you hear about. They're carrying pistols. And our guide was carrying this Smith & Wesson 500, which is like, if you remember the Dirty Harry series with Clint Eastwood, he had a 44 Magnum. The 500 is like the 44 Magnum on steroids. It's even bigger. It's double the energy of a 44 Magnum. So I asked the guide, I said, well, is that pistol really going to stop the bear? Like, I can't imagine a 500, even a 500 Smith & Wesson Magnum is going to stop a 1,500 pound pissed off mama brown bear charging you. And he goes, no, he smiled and he goes, no, the pistol's not to shoot the bear. It's to shoot you, Colin. And I looked at him for a second and I couldn't figure it out. And then it finally dawned on me, the first lesson of being in the Alaskan wilderness. And this is it. You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the other guy. The bear just wants a meal. You don't need to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun your buddy that you're with. So if the guide shoots me in the leg, all he's got to do is move faster than a guy that just got shot in the leg. And of course, it was a joke. But this lesson is immediately applicable to every business and every dental practice right now in the world. If you freeze right now, you're dead. The bear, the coronavirus is charging. If you freeze, you're dead. You've only got three choices: freeze, fight, or flight. You can try to bop him on the nose and fight him. I don't think that's a really good idea either. But if you run, that's your best chance. You just got to make sure you leave something behind as a treat for Big Mama Brown Bear. And this same thing is applicable in every business and every dental practice. The goal here is not to figure out how to solve the predicament that we're in. And I talked about this last week. The problem here is not the coronavirus. It's not the government's reaction. It's not Wall Street's crashing. It's not the stay-at-home orders. Those things are predicaments. We can't solve for them. The problem is, how do we stabilize our business given the environment? How do we figure out a way to thrive in the current environment given that the needs of patients are going to dramatically change? And I'm going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. Your only goal here is to figure out how to outrun all the guys down the road from you, right? When we've talked about dominating your market area before, you don't need to outrun the coronavirus. All you got to do is outrun the competition. And that's what I want to show you tonight, is how to just outrun your buddies or the people that maybe aren't your buddies also down the road. Someone is going to prosper during these times in your market area. Somebody is going to find that magic formula and they're going to put it into play, and it's going to be rock and roll time. The first mover advantage is in full swing coming out of this crisis. And here's the reality of the last several mass chaos situations that we've been through. Oftentimes, and this is what I'm seeing as a likely scenario. Hygiene is going to be the portion that takes the biggest hit. And the reason I think it's going to take the biggest hit, and the reason we've seen it take the biggest hit before, is it's often the most discretionary. It's often the area that a lot of dentists rely on to elevate the restorative side of their business. In other words, a lot of your restorative comes out of hygiene rather than attracting restorative directly from the market. Finding patients that need restorative rather than just getting them in for a hygiene exam and, in the routine process, you move them up onto the restorative calendar. I talked to Dr. Ron, and many of you know him. I see some familiar faces on here tonight that also know Dr. Ron personally. And this is what Dr. Ron had to say about this. When we reopen, hygiene is going to get hammered. Hygiene will take the biggest hit of everything in dentistry, and it always has. The HIV crisis, and Old Surfer, I saw you dropped a Q&A in here about you went to dental school during the HIV panic. This is immediately applicable. Dr. Ron said during the HIV crisis, H1N1, which was only 2009 or 2008-ish, the 2008 recession, in his practice, hygiene was always the first thing to go and the last thing to come back. And I've been hearing something, and we're going to release some information on this from the 2008 recession about the pent-up demand. I'm going to suggest that there may not be pent-up demand in most dental practices. And I want to talk a little bit about this. This coronavirus thing is going to be a 12 to 24 month issue. You're shut down right now, or generally shut down other than emergencies right now for most practices. When things reopen, there's a high likelihood that we get into an on again, off again type environment where we open things up and then the cases spike and then they got to close things back down. And I think these could be localized hotspots. I think they could even be regional hotspots depending on the area, right? New England is a lot more packed together than the Midwest is. And I think there's going to be an ongoing concern about how to mitigate this coronavirus thing. Until they reduce this thing to a case of the sniffles by way of vaccination and successful, overwhelmingly successful treatment. I don't know if that's the hydrochloroquine stuff or not. It may be, it may not be. But until they reduce this thing to the mortality rate of the flu, which is fractions of a percent, this thing is still going to linger and keep people from coming into your practice. And it's especially going to linger if we go through this red light, green light scenario down the road and we start getting into, well, you're open for 2 months and then you shut down for a month. And then you're open for 2 months and then you shut down for a month. And as much as I hate to say it, the states and cities that have issued these stay-at-home orders, the dam has been broken, and they're very likely. There was a great article on Wall Street Journal that I sent out to everybody on my list. If you're in here tonight, you very likely saw my write-up with the Wall Street Journal article attached. That article did a phenomenal job of talking about the future as I see it. I may be wrong, but this is how I'm looking at this crisis that we're in right now. So what happens? What happens if you just hunker down and you shut everything off and just ride this thing out? You play, you get in the bunker during the hurricane. One of the things we're going to release tonight is lessons from the 2008 recession. And we're going to release some of the data around our practices that went through the 2008 recession, how they handled it, what they did, and then also how the rebound, how they came out of the situation once the economy opened back up. What the data shows is that practices that shut down completely and didn't prepare for the next phase of rebound had a 38% on average lower revenue for 6 months longer. Now, this isn't about marketing. This is about the total strategy that's in place for your people, your practice, your patients, and having continuity across all this. The greatest risk that you face today is not the quarantine or the stay-at-home orders. Rather, the greatest risk you face right now is what your dental practice is going to look like once you reopen. The huge issue is that every practice expects to be competitive and prosper, yet very few are preparing for how to accomplish that. As Bob Knight famously said, most people have the will to win. Few people have the will to prepare to win. If you go through this thing and reopen without a specific plan and strategy that's thought out, figuring out how to survive it was really pointless. And that's kind of how I'm looking at this. There's 10 questions that I emailed out that are the kind of the linchpin of this new post-COVID world that we're going to live in. And I want to read these to you from my email. How are you handling reappointments of cancellations during closure? And what's your appointing strategy? What's your strategy for ensuring the patients attend their appointments in this post-COVID world? How are you positioning yourself and your practice for maximum case acceptance, given the government is saying we may never shake hands again? How are you going to prioritize your patients in larger cases, given the need to produce 15 to 20% more for 4 to 6 months to close your 2020 profit gap? Considering hygiene is going to take the biggest hit when you reopen, how are you going to prioritize your elective cases to offset this? How are you going to find those elective cases? And if hygiene is your largest source of elective treatment, what's your go-to-market strategy to attract these patients directly? What's your plan to attract more and better patients when you reopen? How are you going to market? Are you going to market like everyone else does when you reopen, or are you changing this strategy post-COVID-19? How closely are you watching your cash burn? What is your cash burn a month? Where are you at? What percentage of your collections was salary before? Who were your A players? And what is your strategy to hire them back profitably? I've talked to a lot of doctors that had 30, 40, 45% of their collections as labor prior to this, 50% of their collections as labor prior to this. How are you going to bring your team back in a profitable way that's going to enable you to retain your A players? Realize the secret to retaining your A players is compensating them. If you're running at 40 or 50% of your collections as salary, how are you going to compensate your A players for what an A player needs for you to retain them? It can't be done. You've got to build the efficiencies in your office to have the money to repay your A players enough to retain them so they can go and help you build this practice, right? Those doctors that don't take the time to answer these 10 questions now are going to have plenty of open schedule and open chairs when their practices reopen. And like I said, it's highly likely that states are going to play an on again, off again. And you need to have these strategies in place to maximize your production during the open times, because it's very likely we're going to go into another round of this. And if pent-up demand exists, which I think is unlikely, I don't see that as being enough to fill your practice up. Tonight, we've got 4 strategies. I've hung my hat on having 5 strategies a week. This week, we've got 2 huge strategies for you. And I think you'll see how expansive they are once we get into them. Lessons from the 2008 recession white paper are available. We'll send you this link out here in a few minutes. The myth of pent-up demand free report is also available at this URL. You can type it into your browser, or we're going to send you the link here in just a few minutes. Don't worry about jumping in here and trying to write these down. We're going to send it all to you. This is all recorded. It's going to be posted on our website afterwards. There won't be anything you miss. Trent Arkema, our VP of Marketing, is on here tonight, and he's going to be walking you through a 20-week, 4-phase slingshot back marketing plan. This is exactly what we talked about last week. Last week, I gave you kind of the teaser, the high level. This week, we're going to get into the details. We've got 6 or 8 slides, and we're going to go through what this 4-phase 20-week marketing plan to slingshot out of this thing looks like. And then I'm going to pick back up after Trent, and I've got what I heard from you all last week was this. You've got all kinds of strategies and tools, but we need a guide. We need, how do we implement all these? What's the order we need to do all this stuff in? So we've turned all this into a 10 vital steps to thriving guide. And I'm going to walk you through the 10 steps, and then I'm going to give you the link. It's one PDF that you can download, boom, right there, all in one spot. So with that being said, let's see if I missed anything. Trent, are you on here?
Yes, I'm here.
Awesome. Can you turn your volume up a little bit? It's a little bit faint here on my end, at least.
How's that sounding?
Sounds a lot better. Welcome. Thanks for joining us here, Trent.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Glad to be here. So as Colin mentioned, we're going to take you through this 20-week marketing plan. I think the one thing that you're going to get out of all of this, well, one main thing is that now is not the time to be silent and kicking back. Now is not the time to stop communicating with your current patients and with future patients, even if you are closed. And so, Colin, if you want to jump to the next slide, we'll get right into this. The first thing you should be doing as right now is, if you can be doing emergency dental, you should be doing it. You should be promoting it across all the channels that you can right now, whether that be on your website, whether that be on GMB listings and postings, whether that be on social media. That should be through paid search ads that you're doing. Right now, we're seeing a lot of patients and prospective patients using chatbots if our clients have it, and it's blowing up, both for emergency and just in general. They want to be able to communicate with the practices. And so anything you can do to get this message out, you should be doing.
If I can jump in, Trent, I've seen something that's immediately applicable here. I've seen reports from our call quality team that we have a lot of patients that are, when they finally get a hold of one of our practices, they're saying things like, I've called every practice in town and you're the only one that's open. And it's almost like exasperation from the patients that they can't find anybody to handle their emergency.
Yeah, and that's what we're seeing. So again, patients can't find a dentist. Again, these emergencies are under $200. It's cash, and so just getting that message out there that you can handle emergencies. When you handle those emergencies, again, I've seen signs on dentist doors saying, "This is how you get a hold of me." And so having that message out there is definitely a way to go. There's video now. Now we got video.
There we go.
Perfect. And so there's another side effect, a benefit of doing this too. The reviews and social proof that you can get from this is another benefit of being open and helping people that are in need right now. People are most likely going to leave reviews saying, wow, I found this dentist. I couldn't find anybody. I was in major pain, and this dentist was able to take care of me. So again, we also have, Pat Live that we've been talking about since we started these webinars that you can do for free. And then you can add that so calls aren't getting missed, and you're getting these patients in the doors when you guys are available. Another thing that you should be doing is post it on social media. Whether you're open or not, you should be able to create content and be posting, if not every day, almost every day. Again, this can be about doing emergency dental. It can be about non-COVID-19 stuff. Just make sure it's not insensitive. You can be doing this even if you're not open. you just want to stay top of mind right now. It's very important that you don't lose sight of current and prospective clients that are out there that are looking for dentists. Promoting a clean and sterile environment. Again, whether you're doing this on your website, whether if you're making videos and images of what your office looks like now, promoting how clean your office is, how you're going to treat patients when they come in, right? You're going to only see one patient or two patients at a time. You're going to text them when their appointment is ready, and you're going to have non-patients wait in the car. Anything you can do to promote that you're above whatever recommendations are out there, that you're doing more than what's required, is going to be build that trust and that confidence that they want to see you. Again, we have a letter that we've created. Again, you'll have a URL to this. We'll send this out. But these are all things you can be doing now, whether you send this out by mail, whether you're doing this via digital, getting this message out that you have a clean environment, that you care about your patients, that your staff is doing cleanings before and during and after. Whatever your staff is doing during the time that the patient is there and after they're there is paramount right now. And so that's just another thing you can be doing during this time.
Trent, we got a great idea from Dr. Griffin about taking pictures of the doctor and staff in the enhanced PPE to get the word out that we're leading the charge in infection control. I think that's fantastic.
That's just what this is talking to, right? Like anything you can do to promote that clean and sterile environment, and that patient's going to be safe, you're going to be ahead of the game with that. So those are all things you should be doing in phase one. Again, the message is not to be silent during this time. People are looking for dentists at this time, and they might not be in the immediate, but even if it's in future, you want to take advantage of that, and you don't want those practices going somewhere else. Again, with the chatbot, a lot of people think all businesses are closed right now, so they're not calling that phone number like they usually would. So they're going to your website, right? And they're finding some way to communicate with your practice, and that chatbot is a great way to do it. It's AI. It could be artificial intelligently driven. We can have answers. It can be texting. It can be live chat. However you guys want to do it, we can help you do it. But it's just paramount that you keep in communication with your clients, right, with your patients right now.
And just as a reminder, I mentioned this before we started tonight. Next week, we're going to have an expanded section around this safety and security plan. I'm going to bring some cool tools from some other folks I've talked to, HEPA filtration, stuff that you can do in your practice that is going to differentiate you as you start to craft this new marketing message coming out. So we'll talk a little bit more about that next week.
As we move into phase two and we get into, the states and government and national allowing businesses to open back up, as we find that information out, it's going to be paramount to start creating communication that lets your not only current patients know that you're going to be opening soon, but also, again, prospective patients. One, just a message that, hey, we're opening. Two, I think it's going to be paramount that you come out with, create and promote special offers. If you don't already have them, I think this is going to be key. Like, a lot of people are unemployed. A lot of people don't have insurance. They're going to need help paying for what they need. So what I'm recommending is unique special offers for both new patients and existing patients. Again, and we're going to bring those to every channel, whether that be promoting those on the website. We're going to promote them on GMB through Google Posts. We're going to do it through our paid search ad copy. We're going to do it through social media. It might even be a good idea to expand in some channels you haven't, such as podcasts with Spotify, sending out mailings to both current patients and prospective patients. One, letting them know that you're going to open soon. And two, you can combine it with these special offers that you're now creating, whether that be a new patient special, a $79 dental exam for current clients, or whether that be, consultation for somebody that wants restorative at a discount price. You can see on the bottom right hand, we already have social media posts created for all of our clients doing that has a message that, hey, we're going to be open soon. When they tell us, hey, I'm around 2 weeks from opening, to having the message, social media message when they do open, another message going out saying, hey, we're open, come see us. We're the local, trusted local dentist in your area. So we're already thinking about this when this time comes, so we're ready to hit the ground running. But you need to think about what messages you're going to get out there before you even open to let people know this. And again, continuing to promote that clean and sterile environment, continuing with that social media calendar during this time. And then again, this broad brand messaging that you're going to be open soon and you're the place to go to. With that social media. So that's going to be paramount during this time. So as we move into phase 3, this is all about, when you do open. Again, we want that marketing message to go out there again. Again, we're going to continue marketing that you have special offers for new and existing patients. We're going to do that via the website. We're going to do that via Google Posts, social media. We're going to do that via Spotify. We'll put that message on chatbots if we have it. Another thing that I think is going to be important that you do during this time is expanded hours and expanded days. I think if you want to capture where people are at, you're going to have to do it on their time. And so promoting that you're open, early in the morning or late at night is going to be key. Promoting that you're open on Saturdays, I think is going to be key as we rebound from this. I don't think if you think you're going to be able to be open 3 days a week on your normal schedule, I don't think that's going to work. I don't think that's going to get you to the revenue goals that you have for this year. And so promoting that, and again, doing mailings to both current and prospective clients. And we have all those different lists that we could mail out to. And then again, other mediums that we should think about getting this message out there, that whether that be radio, Spotify, TV. This doesn't have to be a long-term play. It could be shorter term than what we normally do, but it's going to be key to get those messages out to as many folks as we can during this time that you're about to open and that you're reopening. And then as we move out of this 1 to 2 months, it's probably going to be maybe 2 to 3 months as we experience, Colin talked about this yo-yo effect of, hey, we're going to open and then we might have to shut down a little bit. But really, when this thing, and we know what the new is, it's about getting all the pieces that we've done back and running, whether that be, your website, your chatbot, your online scheduling. We want to get back on. We want to start doing paid search full force again. We already have the videos, but we want to get reviews back out there. Right now, Google's not posting any reviews just because they don't want bad messages and negative and false messages getting out there. But when patients are coming back to you, we want to get all that stuff turned back on. Local SEO is going to be important. Retargeting. People are going to have questions. They're going to come once. They're going to do some more research, probably more research after this happens than they have ever done before. So we want to capture that audience that has come to your site and then's coming back and making them call the office, scheduling online, scheduling through the chatbot, and continuing all the work we've done from an organic standpoint. So really after this done, it's about getting back to what normal is, right? And we'll figure that out as we go. But having all these components running in some form or fashion is going to be key to getting you back where you were and above that as we make our way through the second part of this year. So those are kind of the 4 phases as we see them. Again, this is example of, paid search going back to what we normally promote, right? It's not necessarily promoting that you're open anymore or that you have new patient offers running. It's about what your specialty is and making sure now everybody knows you're a dental implant expert or you're teeth whitening or Invisalign or orthodontic expert. And so our paid search copy will go back to what it was before this, but there's going to be some time where the messaging is going to have to change, right? And we're gonna promote you being open, and we're going to promote the specials that you have, and we're going to promote the environment that people can expect when they come to you. And so it's really important that we time all these things correctly, and we'll help you get through that, and we'll be making sure we get the right message out at the right times. Same thing with social, right? We want to keep that branding awareness out there, and we always want that running. We always want a brand portion going. It's very cheap to do that on social, but also social media is good for promotions, right? Whether that be a new patient offer, promoting same-day care, if you have an event going. I think it's going to be a while until we can do events and seminars again. But once people are feeling comfortable again, then we can get those events up back and running and the seminars up back and running. But I don't think that's in the near future. I think that's longer term thinking. But we're already thinking about how that looks and what it looks like and how we're going to do it when we get this thing back to running like it should be and like you guys expect it to be.
Yep. Awesome. Let's pause here and actually let's take some questions. Rita asked if there was a phase 3 slide. Yes, we actually had this slide right here was based around phase 3. And then these couple links, again, if you can't click on the links in the webinar, unfortunately, it's not clickable on your screen. We'll send these out later. So this was the phase 3 discussing continuing some of the existing strategies and some broad go-to-market approaches. What other questions do we have here for Trent? Let's see. Back through the chat here. Any marketing questions, strategy questions? Anybody have anything? What's your biggest challenge that you see reopening in marketing and attracting patients? Anonymous, should I be running paid advertising right now? Trent?
If you're open, yeah, you should be. Even if you're only doing emergencies, you should be running a paid media budget. It probably is not as big as what it was and before this happened, but you should be getting that message out there that you are open, that you are taking patients. And so, yeah, I would run paid media during this time if you could take any type of patient right now.
Teresa says, I think some people will be scared to come in. How would you answer that, Trent?
Yeah, I think that's an objection we're going to have to overcome. I think, with the clean environment, the sterile environment, the message about you're taking extra steps to ensure your office is clean, you're taking extra steps to ensure that the patient's going to be protected, that all your employees are doing the right things. Again, that message about what you're doing before, during, and after that appointment is going to be a key message to get out there during this time. And so, there is going to be probably a little bit of hesitation, but it's not only, I think that's a lot of different verticals are going to experience that. So we're going to have to get that message out there through all of our available channels.
Mm-hmm. Dana asked a question about ever-changing CDC requirements and keeping up and making sure the staff feels safe as well as the patients. Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll take that one. I think there's been a little bit of knee-jerk reaction by everybody involved in this whole thing. As we get into this, we're going to start to see less of the ever-changing part and more stability. I know it's been a little bit crazy. We're going to talk more about some of the marketable attributes next week of helping the staff and the patients feel safe. So that'll be a couple things that we'll dive into that a little bit more next week. Amanda asked about the virtual smile assessment. Can we pair that with ads and running those when the practice opens up? Great way to deal with patients in fear. Trent, you want to take that?
Yeah, if you have any kind of virtual assessment consultation that your office is doing, I know we launched it, something like that right when this started. So if you have that on your website, you want to promote that, again, we can do that via a number of different channels, whether that be paid, social. We can write blogs about it. We can do Google posts about it. We can put links in your GMB listing about it. So there's a number of ways we can promote that. And it's a way, again, for you to connect with your patients or prospective patients. If they have questions and they have that fear before they want to come into your office, right? It's a way for you to talk to them, to answer their questions, and make them feel comfortable about what is going on in your office. So pairing those two things up it can be easily done, and we can start running ads immediately, both in paid search and paid social.
Roya asked about seeing emergency patients once they run out of N95 masks. I'll take that one. I've seen some really cool sterilization systems that are sterilizing masks now. The once disposables can be reused. I can shoot you over some more information on what I've seen in the market on those. They're also going to be included in next week's presentation, showing you guys some new cool tools, so to speak, of again, back to the marketable attributes. How are you helping flatten the curve as a dental practice? How are you helping to lessen the burden of the shortage of supplies? That's a marketable attribute. So if you have a sterilization system that you can reuse these masks, now you have something that society and people at large are going to want to see. Cool. So we'll jump on from there and jump into 10 vital steps to thriving during difficult times. Thanks, Trent. Appreciate you hopping on here and going through that with us.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And so this 10 vital steps, I told you guys, some of this you guys saw last week, but what I heard last week is, how do we put this whole thing together, Colin? You've given us like a buffet of all the stuff that we need to be doing, but what we need is an action plan. We need the steps. We need to put this in order. So we've done just that. And here in a few minutes, I'm going to give you the link. I'm going to go through the 10 steps, and then I'm going to give you the link, and you can go download this guide and download everything that's associated that I'm going to talk about here at one single URL. The first thing, step 1, our Survive and Thrive guide. This is some of the basic stuff. When this crisis first opened up, we put this guide together. And this guide goes through options for maximizing cash flow, student loans, rent, utilities, SBA programs. This is kind of the basics guide of everything that was going on when need video back on Colin. Let me see here. Dr. Eccles, is video back on me now? It should be. Should be back on me. Let me know if it's not. So this Survive and Thrive guide is all the basic stuff that we went through when we first started. We've rolled all this up into our new 10 vital steps into thriving in difficult times guide. Next thing, you've got to understand your cash burn. This calculator that we made available to you last week, we're giving this away again this week. I'm going to send you the link here in a few minutes, and you'll be able to go in. Cash, seeing a blank video for Trent. Let me see here. I don't know, Dr. Eccles. I think it might be. How about now? Did that fix it? I spotlighted my video. I don't know if that's the right feature to click on here. There we go. Perfect. Cash to your practice is oxygen. You can go 2 minutes without oxygen, or 3 or 4 minutes maybe if you're really good. If you run out of cash, you run out of business. So you've got to understand your cash burn and understanding your assumptions. What are all the things that you have assumed you know? And make sure you quantify that. You've assumed that you're going to do, there's going to be this much rent and this much labor and this utilities, and you're going to do some emergencies, and I think this can add up to this amount. Advertising, contractors, benefits, interest expenses. Here's some of my other expenses, meals and entertainment, and oops, I pulled out the company credit card and swiped it, and that might have been a personal expense type stuff. You got to understand all that, right? This cash burn calculator will put it into financial quantifiable terms in a very visual way for you. Realize with this, perfection is the enemy of progress. The faster you get in here and start putting in your numbers, your beginning numbers, and laying out your budget, the faster you're going to be able to iterate through this and constantly be adjusting where things are at. But you've got to understand where your cash situation is at. And depending on how much dry powder, if you want to call it that, cash on the sidelines you have, this may be more important or less important to you. If you don't have a lot of dry powder on the sidelines that you can invest if you need it, this is maintaining your cash is critical, because once you spend it, it's gone forever. So you've got to be managing your cash very tightly right now. Just as if, you're in the basement of a building and the water's coming up, you're managing your oxygen very, very tightly to make sure that you're going to have enough to survive this crisis. Let me ask you a question about your cash situation. If this crisis went on for 6 months instead of 3, what would you do differently? I don't ask you that question because I think it's going to go on for 6 months. I ask you that question to challenge your assumptions. You've, like I have, probably made assumptions that this thing's going to last for so long and it's going to be so bad. And then coming out of this, there's going to be a ramp up period, a slingshot, and you've made all these assumptions around how you think it's going to be. And I think if this crisis has proven anything to us, it's proven one thing, and that is everything we think we know is very likely to be wrong. That has shown us to be the case overwhelmingly. So if I'm going to challenge your assumptions and say, what if this goes on for 6 months instead of 3? How would that change the decisions you're making today? If I said to you, what if this was on for 3 and then it turned off for another 3 months at the end of the year? How would that change the decisions you're making right now? And I think going through, we don't need to plan for Armageddon here. Armageddon is unlikely. Zombie apocalypse is equally unlikely. But there are a number of scenarios that I think we need to think about as we're going through this, and cash is king. Step 2, SBA loan strategy updates. I've promised you guys an update on the SBA loan stuff. We've got doctors that are getting funded this week. The Paycheck Protection Program loans have been approved, and we've got doctors that are getting funded. Now, this depends. If you're at Wells Fargo, which shut applications down for a little while, I'm being told BB&T, Truist Bank, if you're on the East Coast, there's loans coming through for them. I've got verifications from several smaller regional banks that loans are being funded. Overwhelmingly right now, it seems like the big banks are slower to get loans funded than some of the smaller banks are. And I think that comes down to the automation that some of the big banks have had to build because of their scale, and the small banks have just processed them by hand and they've gotten them done faster. I also want to touch on the timing strategy. You get forgiveness 8 weeks from the day you originate the loan or get funded. There's no forgiveness penalty if you rehire your people by June 30th. So if you can plan to get this loan funded May 1st, then Dr. Griffin just got funded. Fantastic. Glad to hear it. If you can get this in a perfect world, the latest date you want to get this thing funded is May 1st. And then you have time to rehire all your people within the forgivability window. You can go later if you want, but you're not going to get the forgivability benefit of that. I think right now it's reasonable to say that most areas are going to open back up in May. This is today's projection. It might change. This is how I'm feeling about this right now. Dr. Roush brings up a great point that he's not looking at the forgivability. He's looking at this as a 1% loan for 2 years. I think that's a great way of looking at this. This is a gift. You can't get money at 1% anywhere else in the world at any time, hardly. And many of you on here will remember the days of 17 and 19% interest back in the early 80s. That was crazy. This loan is a gift at 1%. And if you can use this as some cash flow to get through these times, I think that's a great use of money and gives you that extra safety. Now realize, Dr. Roush, they did change the restrictions around the PPP that not only can you not get forgiveness if you spend it on something other than rent, utilities, interest, and labor, but flat out the money cannot be spent on anything other than rent, utilities, interest, and labor, or payroll, if you want to call it that, and benefits. So make sure that you are spending it, and what we're seeing a lot of doctors do and recommend is that they're keeping it in a separate bank account. That way they're just making a finite number of draws from it that are all verified for the forgivability portion. I think there's going to be some hoops to jump through, and the cleaner and simpler it is, if it's as simple as opening another bank account and there's just a draw back and forth, I think that makes it really, really simple. Additionally, I want to give you all some new information. I'm going to lead off with a disclaimer. I'm not an attorney and I'm not a CPA, but I've talked to hundreds and hundreds of bankers and experts. I've talked to people that were involved in the creation of this legislation that have worked under the Rubio and others campaigns. And I think I bring some information to the table that maybe you guys aren't getting from some other sources. On the forgivability portion, I have at least 2 banks that are telling me that self-charged rent is forgivable. So if you own your property, if you own your real estate, and your dental practice pays rent to another entity that you own, I am being told by 2 separate banks right now that that rent payment is okay under the PPP and it is forgivable. Now, your mileage may vary. Your bank may or may not allow that. The SBA may issue different guidelines down the road that changes that. I'm telling you what I'm being told right now. I would definitely take a strategy of including a lot of expenses out of that SBA loan and making sure you have overspent. If your goal is to maximize forgiveness, I would make sure to overspend. We've already seen the regulations change significantly from draft to final legislation to passing to guidelines revision 2. Additionally, we have several other banks telling us that this is on an all cash basis. Regardless of, I know we have a couple larger practices on here that may be on an accrual basis. I'm being told by the banks that this forgiveness portion is all cash basis. And if you happen to prepay for some additional rent, utilities, or insurance, as long as you stay under the 25% threshold for non-labor, that's forgiven as well. So if you've got an insurance premium, you can pay off some disability or property or liability or professional. If you've got some rent, you can prepay as long as you stay under that 25% threshold. I'm hearing from the banks that that's going to be forgiven. Again, subject to change. This is today's information. For the time, rehiring 0 to 2 weeks prior to reopening seems like the right strategy. If you're in a position with more resources to add more of your expenses to fit within this 8-week period, I think that would be prudent to overspend to maximize that forgivable portion. I think it's likely that some of this stuff ends up changing and there might be some stuff that gets excluded down the road. Now, we've posted onto our COVID-19 update page on our website the latest fact sheet and guidance from the SBA and the Treasury. If you want to jump out there, smartboxdental.com, link at the very top to get our COVID-19 special information page, and then you can go scroll down and there's a fact sheet in there. I'll continue to update you guys as I know more. Strategy number 4. I want to talk off with talking about the tale of 2 practices. Many of you have heard me talk about this before, but this is the power of the 5 A's. If you take an average dentist that gets 100 new patient opportunities, and each of these stages, these 5 stages, answer, appoint, attend, accept, and average, they convert at a certain rate, and these are the averages that we're seeing across the country right now. The average dentist out of 100 new patient opportunities is going to generate a little bit shy of 20 grand. If you take each of those 5 stages and you make very small incremental changes to each stage, 10%, you move the answered from 70 to 80%, you move the appointed from 60 to 70%, so on and so forth. You increase your average visit or average patient value by 20%. Very modest, very conservative adjustments. You can double or triple the revenue that you're getting out of your new patient opportunities. And this is the ultimate guide for turning your marketing into money. We've got to focus on each of these 5 strategies and figure out what do we need to do to make incremental improvements. We don't need to move mountains. We just need to move each one 10% or 15%. It goes back in the late 80s. There was a guy by the name of Michael Dell. You may have heard of him. And Michael had this crazy idea to start a computer company. And in the late 80s, Michael Dell was in major, major trouble. He was on the brink of bankruptcy. And Michael went to his board, his VPs, and he said, guys, we have 85 days of inventory. If we kept our sales right where they're at, it would take us 85 days to sell all the inventory we have. We have no cash. And if we don't get from 85 days inventory to 45 days inventory in the next 2 weeks, you all are not going to have jobs and we're going to be bankrupt. And his whole board, his VP said, oh my God, Michael, it can't be done. We can't go from 85 days inventory to 45 days inventory in 2 weeks. And Michael said, well, you just got to go figure it out. Go do it. And they came back and they said, okay, we couldn't get from 85 to 45, but we got from 85 to 60. And Michael said, great, you've bought us another 2 months. A month later, he comes back and he said, guys, we're at 60 days inventory. We need to get to 30, and we need to do it in the next 30 days. How can we do this? And his whole management team says, oh my gosh, Michael, you're crazy. It can't be done. It's not possible, right? And he said, well, just go figure it out and come back. And they went from 60 to 46 days of inventory. Does anybody, and this process went on and on and on. And does anybody know how much inventory Dell holds right now at this very moment? Does anybody want to take a guess? Jump in the chat box if you want to guess what Dell's inventory is right now. Anybody want to take a stab at it? I think this is a great story because this is incremental improvement at its best. Right now, Dell has about, yeah, good guess, Dana, 5 days. I'll give you the answer. 15 days, 10 days. Yeah, great guesses. 10%, 10 days, yeah. Right now, Dell has 15 minutes of inventory. 15 minutes. Let that sink in for a second. 15 minutes of inventory. It's an incredible story of incremental improvement. And when you place an order with Dell, Dell has subcontractors and wholesalers that sell them equipment that are located on their campus in Austin. And when you place an order, they then order from one of their wholesalers, and some dude in a truck drives across Dell's campus that they pay rent to Dell for, by the way, and they deliver it to Dell, and Dell assembles it on the spot and ships it to you. 15 minutes of inventory. And this is what you have to do in your practice. We don't need to go from 85 days to 15 minutes overnight. We just need to consistently make small improvements, and before you know it, you'll be a rock star. And you've got to have the data in place, of course, to be able to see this. And a lot of practices we talk to don't have the data, and I'm going to show you how to get the data. We optimize on what's called the dentist performance framework, and there's 5 parts to our framework. We're going to give you the guides. We're going to give you the evaluations to all this tonight. The guide, the evaluation, and the money funnel calculator I'm going to give to you. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit right now, and then I'm going to give you all the stuff at the end, and you guys can take it and implement it and execute on it, and it's going to make a tremendous change in your practice. As a marketing agency, which is kind of the core of what we started out doing, we can make phones ring. But at the end of the day, if we're not really driving growth in a practice, we've got to look across the entire performance of the 5 core areas. It's not just about more leads and more patients. More and better patients, increasing patient value, retaining those patients, making sure the back door is not wide open. How do we grow profits, and how do we build a motivated and productive team? We've been doing this longer, and that's why we continue to innovate towards this. And these are the 5 keys to practice growth. The practices that are focused on these additional areas are going to get a better ROI and end up having more profit to reinvest in the business. Remember, I talked earlier about practices that have 35 or 40 or 50% labor as a percentage of their collections. If you don't have the money to pay your A players, you're going to lose your A players. The A players are going to go where they're most appreciated and best compensated. And you've got to have a profitable strategy for your people that retains your best players. Because every time you lose people or your team is unmotivated, anybody want to raise their hand and tell me you've ever lost great people, or you've ever had somebody on your team that was unmotivated? What did it cost you? It cost you dearly. It cost you gray hairs. It cost you stress. It cost you money. I've got an expression at SmartBox. Anytime there's drama, I've made a point to my leaders. Anytime there's some kind of drama or some kinds of stuff going on, I just pull out my checkbook and I say, what's this going to cost, guys? What's the cost of dealing with this? And I don't say that as if there's a blank check to write. I say that to shine the light on the real problem here. We've got some of our best minds sitting around a table working on a problem. And what is really the value of solving this problem? If we don't solve this problem, what's the check you're going to have to write? And if we do solve this problem, what's the check you're going to have to write? Let's get real clear on what this drama does to us, and people turnover and all that stuff, and let's just fix it. It's not that hard to fix. Which of these areas do you feel like you're doing best in? This will be the question you need to ask yourself. You don't need to pick all 5 areas. Pick 1 or 2. Just as, you need to focus on incremental small improvements here. Pick 1 or 2 areas here that you think are the best opportunity for you to increase, for you to grow in. When you can focus on 1 or 2 areas, focus is going to increase your power. When you can attract more and better patients, you're going to attract the right patients, establish expert status, build a team-driven practice that's motivated and accountable. Leverage the 5 A's and the money funnel to make sure that you and your team have clarity on what the outcomes you're trying to produce are, because you're focused on the metrics that matter. And the office that focuses on this for 5 years versus 1 year is going to be exponentially better. And when you get to consistently work on these things and you're consistently going through these cycles, it's that incremental improvement. It's the Michael Dell story. You're going to look back after focusing on this for 2 or 3 years and you're going to go, holy cow, we have 15 minutes of inventory now. How did we do that? And you'll start to see it was those 10% improvements. It's compound interest. It's like looking back on your investment accounts. Maybe not right now is the best example of that, but it's like looking at that and seeing that incremental improvement over the last several years. It's not about, there's not some big shiny object that's going to fix and miraculously cure all your problems. It's these small incremental improvements along the way, and having a guide and a strategy that wraps together the marketing, the money, and the management. And when we can put that together, it can create some really awesome things. It creates the power for us to level up our teams. And this, again, this is all stuff I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you the guide. I'm going to give you the evaluations, and I'm going to give you the calculators. Tonight, you're going to get them, freebies, handouts. I'm just not giving them to you yet because I want you to focus on me right now. Once I'm done talking through it, I'm going to give you the link to all this good stuff. How do we level up our teams? During this shutdown, we're having a lot of doctors that are attempting to keep their staff, or they've laid some off, or maybe there's a few on board. And, these are big decisions. These are really important decisions. This has been seen by many to be a perfect time for training and development. What we're going through right now, think of it as an extended holiday break. I know that's not a great way to think about it, but if you're out for 2 weeks over Christmas and you're out for 2 months now, the strategies for leveraging that time to level up your team are similar. You just have 2 months instead of 2 weeks. I'm not trying to say that makes it easier. I'm just trying to relate to the timing of these events when you can leverage these in your practice during normal times to also level up your team and grow them. As we talked about before, in order for you to overcome your gap this year, the math says that you need to go 16 to 20 weeks of increased production to make up for these shutdowns. If you can grow your practice 15 to 20% for 16 to 20 weeks, you can largely close the profit gap by the end of the year. The most powerful lever you have to do this is the 5 A's and the money funnel. And benchmarking your practice both against national averages as well as against yourself. How can we look at what maybe one staff member is doing appointing versus another? In this example, I took this screenshot this morning out of our Practice HQ dashboard. In this practice, which of course I've anonymized, Julie is appointing at 80%, Tristan at 80%, Hannah at 0%. 0 is really hard, just as in school. If you ever forgot to turn a paper in, I know I did once or twice. If you ever forgot to turn a paper in and got a 0, zeros are really, really hard to recover from, right? This right here is really, really hard to recover from. I'm sorry, I read the wrong number off the sheet here. Julie's appointing at 66%, Tristan at 60, Hannah at 0. 80% here on the right is the benchmark. That's the standard that we're aiming for. How do we benchmark each person in your front office against the other teams, against themselves, against the national average. And then we start to look at where do you want to apply your time. I've had doctors before that have told me that an 80% show up rate for appointments was acceptable. A 20% cancellation no-show rate was acceptable for them. And I said, okay, then what do we need to do on the other 4 A's to make these numbers work? And we went and made it happen. This isn't about us telling you where you need to improve or where you're deficient or you're below average. Not at all. We want to give you the data and help you make your own decisions and help you set your own goals. We're going to show you what the data says. We're going to give you some national averages of about 9,000 practices that we benchmark to show you generally where is, how is the rest of the country performing? Top 10%, average, bottom 10%. And depending on your type of practice, your numbers may vary. Not every dental practice is created equal. And because of that, not every statistic is equal. For instance, Dr. Ron, my dad, when he is getting case acceptance on large implant cases, that number may be radically different than if you're doing general restorative type dentistry. Yet both numbers go into a restorative acceptance benchmark, right? So we have to weigh these things, and there's some information that's not in the benchmark that we can give you as well, depending on what type of practice you are. So uber critical to know your 5 A's. We've taken a poll over the past 2 years at SmartBox. 91% of the dentists that we've polled cannot tell me what their 5 A's are. They do not know. They don't know what percentage of calls their staff is answering. They don't know what percentage they're appointing. They generally know what percentage are canceling and no-show, but there's a lot of flex there for a couple different reasons. Everybody has different definitions of cancellations and no-shows. Case acceptance, the doctors usually know pretty well. That's usually the one stat that everybody knows pretty well. And then when I ask them what an average visit or an average patient value is or lifetime patient value, 3 times out of 4, I get the answer, it varies. And I say, well, varies is not an answer to what is the average. Varies means I don't know. And these averages you'll find, if you average a rolling 90-day period or a 12-month period, you're going to find if you're not watching whatever average you want to use, average visit value, average patient value, average yearly patient value, you pick whatever average you want to stick to and just stick with it. Most practices, the average does this. Month to month, it's up and down. And a lot of times, what I find in a lot of practices is the average is the silent killer. When you're working just as hard, you had just as many new patients, you saw just as many appointments, you did just as many prophies, but the cash just didn't end up in the bank account, and you look back and you go, what happened? A lot of times the average is the silent killer. And not always, but I see that a lot. I also see the answer rate be the silent killer, the calls you're not answering. That's improved a lot since we've had our technology to show doctors what calls they're not answering. But that was the silent killer for a long time. Appoint, attend, and accept, those are 3 pretty clear metrics. So usually those are in known shape. Excuse me, we pretty much know where those are at. I want to give you our money funnel calculators. This is going to help you to plug in your own numbers and break this stuff down. This pairs with the Success Academy workbook. Now, if you're an orthodontist, I know we have several orthodontists on here tonight, we've built out a money funnel calculator for orthodontists specifically. If you're a dentist, we've built out one for you specifically. They're pretty close, but they have some nuances because the orthodontic business model is so streamlined from a dentist, they don't need a lot of the extra stuff that dentists need to be looking at in their 5 A's. So we're going to give you both of these tonight. You use the one that makes the most sense for you. If you are an orthodontist, use the orthodontist one, the ortho patient life cycle. If you're a dentist, use the marketing maximizer. This is going to let you drop in your numbers, your marketing campaign, your dollars you're spending, and it's going to do all the magic for you. It's going to tell you where all your numbers are at. You just drop stuff into the yellow cells, and it's going to do all the magic for you. Step 5, how do you make the same money this year as you did last year? How do you understand your gap? We worked through several budget scenarios with several clients, and I'm going to give you the template we used to do that. The math says that you need a 15 to 20% increase over the next 16 to 20 weeks to close your profit gap. That's making a few assumptions. It's making the assumption around how you managed your expenses during the downtime. It makes some assumptions around the income you had for emergencies during the downtime. It also makes some assumptions around your overall profitability. And I just picked a practice out of random. We did this for a few of our practices. I just dropped one in here. The sample you'll see, anonymized, obviously. This was a $1.3 million practice that was able to do a substantial amount of work with emergencies and prop up their down months a little bit. So you can see the example, and I'll send you the link to that shortly. But all this is around the 5 A's in the money funnel. We're going to give you our virtual smile assessment. And I know there's a question in here about Old Surfer read patient rants on various Facebook about being charged for phone calls in reference to telemedicine. Docs need to be careful with this new ADA code and alienating patients. Yeah, I don't, Old Surfer, yeah, I've read some of that same stuff too. I don't think a bad implementation of a strategy means it's a bad strategy. What I think you saw on there was a couple doctors that had a poor implementation strategy for new technology, for this teledentistry model. And I completely agree. We need to be cognizant around this new ADA code. We need to be cognizant around alienating patients. But I think they executed on a strategy they hadn't thought through, and they paid the price in terms of patient reviews for that. Let's learn from that mistake and not do it the same way they did it. This remote diagnosis allows patients to meet you where they're comfortable. It also can accelerate your sales cycle. Instead of having to go through a click on your website and schedule an appointment and come in and meet you, and there's a free consultation or a $49 consultation or whatever you offer, they can go right from your website to scheduling and meeting you. And that has a lot of value. And realize the purpose of virtual consults is not to clinically diagnose them. That's not the purpose. You're not going to have x-rays. You're not going to have the type of information to be able to say with certainty what the solution is. But 99.9% of the patients that walk into your practice, you can help. And that's what these patients want to know. Are you a nice guy? Do I like you? Do I think I want you to be my dentist? And yeah, I think you can help me, right? That's what the purpose of this teledentistry stuff is, in my view. It's not to give clinical diagnosis. It's not, you can give general treatment options. My suggestion is to not get into price too much and give general options and say, look, we'd love to have you come into the practice. We can get you scheduled in here. We're only taking one patient in at a time right now. We're sterilizing everything in between patients. And it's a time that you can reiterate the patient security and safety strategy, which leads me to step 7. Trent talked about this a lot. We're going to be rolling out a whole new iteration of this next week. Lots of new technology, lots of new marketable attributes that you can talk about. Here's the letter in its current form. I'm going to give it to you tonight here in a little bit. Step 8, the hidden hygiene tax. We just released this report last week. If you were on here last week, you got a link to this. We're going to cover what is this pre-appointment thing and what is a pre-appointment really worth? How much of my pre-appointments are what we call phantom demand? How do pre-appointments and these scheduling strategies, what effect do they have on my money funnel, your money funnel in your practice? How can I evaluate my practice in 60 seconds and know if I have a problem. In this report, which you're going to get here in just a few minutes, no strings attached, there's 4 questions. And you can answer, if you take these 4 questions to your front office team member, they can answer them. 4 quick questions. And then 2 must-haves. If your 4 questions signal that you've got a problem, what are the 2 must-have things that you probably need to do to go fix this thing? And we're going to spell it all out. We've laid out the data. We've laid out the average cost of the practices that we analyzed was between $17,000 and $34,000 a month. These were practices that ranged from $850,000 up to about $2.5 million per location. So there was a range of these, and there was also a very significant range of the additional incremental collections that came in once they were able to better schedule and solve some of these money funnel issues. This is new for this week, step 9. I'm getting a lot of questions around, should I increase or decrease my fees? And I put this calculator together to help you guys figure this thing out. By and large, should I decrease my fees? The short answer is no. And here's why. If you have a 40% profit margin, which means you have 60% overhead, if you have a 40% profit margin and you decide that you're going to lower your fees by 10% because, I don't know, you think they're too high, you think you need to be more competitive, you think times are tough coming out of this COVID-19 thing, whatever the case is, if you have a 40% profit margin and you lower your fees by 10%, that means you need to increase your collections by 25% to make the exact same profit, right? 40%, if your profit margin's 40% and you lower your fees 10%, you need to do 25% more work to make the same amount of money, which is why I said the short answer to should I lower my fees is usually no. No, you shouldn't. Now, on the other hand, let's say you have that same 40% margin, 40% profit margin after associates, after labor, before, all this is before owner compensation. Anytime you hear me talk about profit, it's before owner compensation, right? I don't care if you're an S Corp or an LLC or a C Corp. I'm talking profit margin before all owner comp, whether you're on a W-2 or a 1099 or member draws or whatever your corporate situation is. If you have a 40% profit margin before owner comp and you increase your fees by 10%. So we're going to do the opposite. 40% profit margin and you increase your fee by 10%. You can now afford to lose 20% of your patients and you still make the exact same money. If you increase your fees by 10%, you can do 20% less work and make the same profit. So usually the question of should I increase my fees? The answer is yes. Yes, you should. And you can run fee schedules and you can see which things do I want to increase. And there's a strategy around what percentile you want to be in. I'm not going to get into that tonight because that's very, very tactical. By and large, do I want to decrease my fees? No. Do I want to increase my fees? Yes. And this is why, because if you decrease your top line, it's very difficult to still make the same amount of money unless you're going to start working 7 days a week. By increasing your fees, you start to pick up all that top line, which is going to go straight to your bottom line. So you can lose 20% of your patients and make the same profit. Or if you increase your fees 10% and you only lose 10% of your patients, which is a very likely scenario, you're going to make more money doing less work. And if you hear me talking about, hey, everything we do, we need to make more money and do less work, that's where this is coming from. If we can raise our fees 10%, that is going to allow you higher profitability, which is going to allow you to compensate your people better, have more stability, put more into your retirement account, and it's a complete win-win around the entire 4 quadrants that we're looking at: patients, the people that work for you, your practice, and the person that signs the paycheck, which is you. The 4 P's, right? I want to talk about right now step 10 in this process. If you are a current client right now, this is the Kickstart program that we're rolling out for you. I want to talk about it. There's people on here tonight that are not current clients. The next slide is going to be applicable immediately to you. Coming out of this crisis, here's the bind that you're going to be in. If you shut everything down, the data from the 2008 recession shows that 38% lower collections for 3 to 6 months longer than the ones that were prepared. I sent that email out last week and asked those 10 questions that you really need to do some thinking about. And I'm going to be thinking about those and continuing to develop strategies for those 10 things. Now, the launch packet, the Success Academy, all this stuff that we're rolling out right now is available to all of our current clients. Success Academy, Dental Intel, getting your team enrolled and leveled up. We also have 2 new things that we're rolling out for our clients right now. The 2 things that are going to be immediately applicable when you reopen your practice is an A-player hiring system. I know some of you, I see some names in here tonight of some of our clients that already have a great hiring system in their practice. I see a few names, and I know I've had some conversations with a couple of you that this has been somewhere that's a big area of opportunity to improve on. So we're rolling out an A-player hiring system. This is based around both the top grading system. It's also based around a number of other very sophisticated hiring systems that we've used and taught our clients at SmartBox. If you want to get a head start on the A-player hiring system, go to Amazon and buy the book WHO, W-H-O, WHO, not the World Health Organization, the book WHO. It's a phenomenal book around hiring A-players. The second thing that we're going to be rolling out that's going to be immediately applicable to a lot of our clients is 6 steps to insurance independence. Unemployment's going up, and that means dental insurance is going down. Less patients with insurance. How can we navigate this new environment to make sure that we're not reliant upon the insurance companies and we're taking our future into our own hands? And these are 2 comprehensive strategy guides that I'm working on right now, and I'm expecting the insurance independence guide to possibly be available as soon as April this month, and the A-player hiring system probably into May. Both of them are in a draft form right now, and I'm doing a lot of work on those this week and subsequent weeks. And we're going to get those out within the next couple months, likely before you reopen. So that'll be 2 really, really great products to help you guys with those 2 big needs. There's going to be an abundance of A players available, and you've got to bring back your A players, and you've got to bring them back in a profitable way. If your labor, generally our rule of thumb is this: your labor as a percentage of collection should be around 25%. We have practices that are in 17 to 19% range that are super, super lean. We also have practices that are in that 30% range, and there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it depends on your type of practice. I also have seen practices that have labor as a percentage of collections up in the 40s, and it's crippling for a practice to have labor that high. It means you can't reinvest in yourself. It means you're not compensating yourself. You're not able to retain your A players because you can't comp them enough. So take this, if that's you, I'm happy to have a private conversation and talk through it a little bit more. But if you feel like maybe you had too many people on before, look at the percentage. If that percentage is in the mid-high 30s and 40s, that's maybe something you want to consider really looking at. And how do you bring back your A players and comp them in a way that's really going to retain them? And then how do you go find A players? Maybe you had some issues with your team and you want to go hire new people and you want to take this as an opportunity to reset. I think that's a great idea. And what better time to do it than right now? So these are two things we're going to be rolling out, and we're giving them away. I mean, this isn't a product to buy. We're going to be distributing these here at this Wednesday webinar as soon as they're available. And like I said, it's not going to be next week, but likely this month on the hiring system. Oh, sorry, likely this month on insurance independence. Likely next month on the hiring system. Moving on, if you are not a client, if you're a future client, we're offering a very similar program to help you through this time. And if you want to learn all about what we're doing for future clients, I'm not going to talk about it tonight. We're having a special webinar tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern. Many of you are already registered for this. If you want to go see this, this is not going to be a sales pitch. It's Ashley Best, who's worked for me for over 5 years now, is going to be delivering a complete practice growth roadmap tomorrow. And if you want to see what a practice growth roadmap is for one of our clients that we may be onboarding, go to bit.ly/SB20Ash and register. You can also go to our website and you can register to get information for it. But if you use this link, it'll take you right there directly. We're going to go through a whole roadmap and show you guys everything we're doing if you're not a client yet. Again, I'm not going to get into all the details here tonight because there's way too much to talk about. But the ability to level up your team now, get the critical pieces in place to be prepared for this reopening in this slingshot is going to be critical to closing the gap and maximizing your profit this year. And time is of the essence. When this thing reopens, it's going to be game on. So if you are not a client yet, you want to go see this, jump out to this URL. I'll send it to you. Actually, here, what I'll do is I'll just copy this and I'll drop it here into the chat box. It's in the chat. Oh, I guess I got to put http://www. There we go. There's the link right there. You can click on that and you can go register for that. I just put it in the chat box. Now, what you're going to see for the practices that don't prepare, I love Warren Buffett's quote. When the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. When this economy opens back up in a few weeks, the tide is going to go out, and everybody that is unprepared for the new economy, just like I talked about early on, this is going to be as big of a shift in the world as 9/11 was. We're never going to go back to a pre-9/11 society and safety, security, all that stuff. And we're also never going to go back to a pre-coronavirus environment. This is going to change how business operates, how doctors and fundamentally how everything works in the world. And when this reopens, we're going to see who's prepared and who's not prepared. While the scale and scope of this financial crisis might be greater than the previous financial tsunamis, this one thing remains true. The owners and the management teams who were thoughtful and prudent with running their practices prior to these events have a significant advantage to those who ignored the rules of financial gravity. That's what Keith Cunningham says about this. The exact same thing is true right now. Those owners and management teams who are thoughtful with reopening their practices prior to reopening are going to have a significant first mover advantage against those that are not. To use another Keith Cunningham quote, championship teams have world-class defenses. The offense is going to score the points, but defense wins the games, right? I'll give you guys a little sneak peek. Next week, what I'm going to talk about. Next week, this thing's not over yet. Don't be getting antsy yet. Next week, I'm going to talk about the greatest discovery in the history of humanity. This is going to be an enlightening moment that is going to be a lesson, a big, big lesson, I think, that we all need to take back into our businesses. Now, next steps for tonight. If you are, your current webinar did not show. Let me look here. Yeah, so if you click on that link, bit.ly/SB20Ash, You should get, here, let me share this a little differently here. New share. All right, can you guys see this here now? So this is where you should be going. Let me try to copy this link. Maybe that bit.ly link is not working for some reason. Try that link there. That should take you to this link for Ashley's webinar. You can enroll here. You can drop in your phone number, and it'll send you text messages. Chat is one way, I think. Should be going out to everybody. Anyway, let me jump back here, and I'll look at that here in just a second. If you're a current client, email me, and we will get your one-on-one team training scheduled. Right? All the money funnel stuff, everything that's going on, everything that I've presented here tonight, the 10 steps, the 20-week 4-phase plan, all that we're ready to rock and roll on. Send me an email or talk to your client success manager, and we'll get rocking and rolling on all this. In many cases, we've already started on everything that's going on there. If you're a future client, tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be going through an extensive line training for what one of our roadmaps actually looks like. Now, if you want to get the 10 vital steps to thriving during difficult times, 10stepstothrive.com, you can download that right now. And let me show you a little bit about how that's going to work for you to download this. When you click on this box, when you click there, you're going to come to this website here, right? And this download is available to you. You can share it with your friends, with your family, with colleagues, with associates, staff. This is packed with everything I've talked about tonight, as well as the links to download all of these resources, right? So plug in here, plug in your name and your email, and hit continue, right? And now it's going to give you 5 things to do. You can opt in to get your 10 steps report. So you'll click on this checkbox and you'll opt in. Next thing you're going to do is just download the report, and then you can go through here. If you want to share this 10 steps report with 3 of your peers, great. This report is going to help and elevate the entire field of dentistry, and this is going to make you look really smart if you share this report with one of your friends, because it's packed full of everything I covered tonight, and it's going to help them to run their practice. Now, if you also want to go like us and follow us on Facebook and YouTube, you're going to get the first notifications of everything that we're doing and everything as we release it. So plug in your name, plug in your email address. It'll ask you to prove you're not a robot, right? And then click here to download this thing. You click here, you download it, and this is going to give you the report. So as you pull this report up, here's what you're going to find. As you scroll through this report, everything we talked about tonight is going to be here. Deferring student loans, deferring utilities, the rent deferment letter right here. So here's the first link. If you want to get some rent assistance from your landlord, that's kind of one of the first things you need to do. So click here on this link, and it's going to say, hey, get instant access to this rent deferment letter. So we can come here, and this is a rent deferment letter that we've written for a couple of our doctors, and we've anonymized it, of course. But you can download this letter and use it. If you want to come here and you say, okay, calculating your cash burn. I want to come in here and I want to use the cash burn calculator. So I'm going to click here and I'm going to get instant access. No, you don't have to opt in. You don't have to enter your information. Once you enter it once, you got access to everything. You can come in here and this gives you directions. Here's how to use this thing. We're going to come in here and I'm going to say, listen, if my cash gets below $10,000, I need an alarm to go off. I need a buzzer to go off. Or maybe it's $50,000, or maybe it's $150,000, whatever the number is. Plug in your number that you need a cash alert if you drop below, right? Right now, I have cash on hand of $75,000. I'm going to have sales this month of, let's say, because I'm doing emergencies only, I'm going to do $20,000. Returns and allowances, I'm not going to have any returns. Collections on account receivable, let's say I get $5,000 in accounts receivable from insurance that I've previously filed. I've got $500 on some interest payments I owe due, no loan proceeds, and let's say owner's contributions. We're not putting any money into the company right now, right? You can come through here and you can plug all of your expenses in. So this is cash receipts. Then we put in how much cash are we paying out? You know, advertising, commissions, employees, and then click here on this cash burn chart. And it's going to show us really easily. Now, every month is the same, right? Because I haven't put in all my different months. But as you start to project out here, hey, next month I'm going to do 25,000 in sales. Next month we're going to open up in May. So I'm going to do 50,000. And then in June, man, we're going to be back to 100,000 a month cranking because things are getting good. And then in July, we're going to be at 150,000 a month. So obviously I haven't put any expenses in, but you can start to see how this thing is going to show where my cash is going to be. Now, by the same token, what if you think, man, I'm not going to get this thing opened back up. I'm doing 0 right now and 0 in April and 0 in May. And maybe I do 25,000 in June and 50,000 in July, right? And the problem is, geez, I have employee benefit of $5,000 a month to pay for my employee benefits. And I've got interest expenses and I've got all this other stuff going on. Now we start to be able to visualize where is our cash going to be. And remember, when we run out of cash, we run out of business. We've got to manage our cash very frugally and very intentionally during this time. And if you take the time to come plug in your numbers here, this will pay you dividends. I'm going to zero this out. I see there's already, look here, there's already 2 people in this document on the webinar right now downloading it. This is going to be a tool you need to survive this crisis, right? So you're going to go download this tool in here. Next tool, if you want SBA strategy stuff, hop in here, download your copy of our SBA organizer. If you haven't done the Paycheck Protection Loan yet, come right in here. Here's the directions on how to organize all this. Drop in your P&L for your practice. If you got a real estate holding company, drop your P&L in here, and then come in here and plug in all your numbers. This will show you the workforce reduction formula. It'll show you all of the information around the criteria and how these formulas work. And then ultimately how much you can get forgiven, as well as a quick little estimator here to show how much you're planning on spending. And this is going to give you the information you need to make a smart decision around the SBA Paycheck Protection Loan. Understanding your money funnel, going through the 5 A's, right? First, get a copy of our money funnel report. Here it is right here. You can click on it, instant access, right? You can come here and get a copy of our money funnel evaluation. So you can start to evaluate your team by answering these simple questions and rating them and figure out who your A players really are. Once you get through the money funnel stuff, you can get down into understanding the 5 A's, understanding the dentist performance framework, benchmarking your practice. We're going to give you the benchmarks. Really getting in here, looking at what are your 5 A's. 91% of the docs I talk to have no idea what their 5 A's are. They maybe know case acceptance. What about the other 4? The calculators that I'm giving you right here are going to give you that. We've also got an Success Academy workbook. You can come in here and get the ortho money funnel or the dentist money funnel. You can come in here and get the workbook download. All these resources are available right out of here. How do you implement an 80-20 strategy into your practice? The Pareto principle. How do you implement that with your staff and your practice? Talking about the power of 2. The next strategy here. How can we link up Dental Intel and Practice HQ? Right now, we're leveraging Dental Intel because Dental Intel is giving us all the data we need on our practice. All the types of appointments and patients that we need to be plugging in once this thing is over are right here, right? You can get Dental Intel for free right now. Contact us. If you're a client, we can get you Dental Intel for free. If you're a future client, we'll show you how to get it for free. How to make the same money. I showed you guys the budget calculation. You can go right here. You can get straight into instant access to our budget strategy. You can come in here and you can input all your own numbers. This is a very simple budget. Production, collections, labor, facility, lab, marketing, supplies, and profit. We're only looking at these categories. Keep it very high level. This practice that we did this budget for, he was planning on making a little bit shy of 600 in his original 2020 budget. Now with his revised budget, he's going to make about 570. I think that's a pretty good outcome for this year, given all the uncertainty and the turmoil. And that was a $1.2, $1.3 million practice. Teledentistry. If you want our strategy guide, come here, click on this. You can download our teledentistry strategy guide. Patient safety and security. Again, you can get the letter here. We're going to talk about this a whole lot next week. What is the marketable attributes of the security and safety plan? The hidden hygiene tax. What do you need to be doing? How do you value pre-appointments? How do you avoid the illusion of phantom demand by having a fully booked, practice? I've talked to dentists that say, man, my hygiene is booked up for 6 months. That's fantastic. And I say, you're leaving $30,000 a month on the table. You've got to understand how you're really pre-appointing and how to block and how to do these strategies. It's going to open up a world for you. How to discounting versus raise your prices. You can click here on this link. Get my discount fee versus increase fee organizer, instant access. Again, all this stuff, you just click here on these links and it pops right up for you. The full calculator here on increasing and if you choose, decreasing your prices. Our Kickstart program, all the details on this, all the strategies. So it's all right here. All you got to do, 10stepstothrive.com if you want to download this right now. You'll go to the page. Again, there's 5 steps to complete here. You're going to opt in with your email address, then you download the report. Now we're giving away something a little special. Some of you may be interested in this, some of you may not. If you share this report with 3 of your peers, we're going to send you our Survive and Thrive resource box. This is a comprehensive package of some of the best resources and best books that I've written and been a part of, and we're going to ship you a box of it. It's going to be a FedEx or UPS package that comes in the mail, and it's going to be chocked full of a ton of information that I'm not going to be releasing here on these webinars. And we're giving it away for free. All you have to do is share the 10 vital steps report with 3 of your peers. If 3 of your peers opt in and download our report, we will send you this automatically. And all you got to do is click here, and this special link right here will track you. Share it on Facebook, share it on your Twitter, email it to some of your associates, and we will UPS you our Survive and Thrive resource box, no charge. If you want to follow us on Facebook or YouTube, great. We'd love to have you. You're going to get advance notice when we post new resources and post new stuff on there. So that is kind of the end of tonight. With that being said, let's open this up for questions. I know I've already got some questions in here. So let me start going through this. Dr. Eccles, Dental Intel does not work with PracticeWorks. Yeah, that is correct. Unfortunately, EagleSoft, Dentrix, and Open Dental are the only 3 that it works on right now. We do have some integrations with some other software for our rave review system and the appointment reminders and such that we do, but on the Dental Intel side, that is a no-go, and I do not foresee that changing. I've had some behind-the-scenes chats with those guys, and they are full steam ahead with the 3 integrations that they do have. So yeah, unfortunately, I don't see that happening. SBA, retaining employees. One tip that I talked about a little bit a couple weeks ago, if you're getting this paycheck protection loan, use the PPP loan as a sign-on bonus to bring your A players back. Your A players are going to be in high demand, and they're going to be able, you want to make sure that you're getting them back in your practice. If you're getting some PPP money, use that as a little sign-on bonus to bring them back, help them out in their time, and it's going to create a lot of loyalty within your team to do that. Old Surfer went to school during the HIV panic, doubled up on PPE, will happen again. Yeah, that's where all this is going. And that's some of the marketable attributes we're going to talk about next week. Is it's not just about the clinical side of how do we protect and ensure that we don't transmit the virus. It's also how are we communicating that to our patients? Because you can have the best safety in the world. If you're not communicating it to your patients in a way they understand, it's of no value. So that's what we're going to cover next week. Our employee health insurance premiums forgivable, Ken, under the PPP. If you go to our website, let's see. So check this out. If you go to SmartBox Dental and click here on the top, watch this week's Survive and Thrive, and you scroll down here to recommended resources, you're going to see this SBA PPP loan organizer and calculator. Click right there on that. And then instead of clicking up here under instant access, go down here under this PPP fact sheet right here. And this will pull up the latest guidance from Treasury and the SBA. So right here, you can scroll down and what can I use these loans for? Payroll costs, including benefits. So yes, health insurance premiums are included. And then they go into a little more detail here. Payments required for healthcare benefits, including insurance premiums and any retirement benefits. And remember, if you pay yourself a salary, depending on your corporate structure, oftentimes you can include that in the PPP as well, up to $100,000. So yeah, that's this has been a really good program. And I know that it didn't work out perfectly for dentists because a lot of the dentists are closed. The PPP was really built around businesses that are still somewhat operational and need help. I think it missed the boat a little bit on businesses that are completely closed. There's a second round in the works. I am optimistic from the contacts I've talked to that this thing may include some better benefit to businesses that had to close completely or functionally close completely. If you're concerned about when you can open, when should you send in your application for the SBA loan? I would send that in, you have 8 weeks of forgivability and it has to be done by June 30th. So I would think sending that in and working to get approval as close to May 1st as possible is the working strategy that a lot of our doctors are working under right now, Dr. Straight. Specific situations may change that, but largely that's what we're focusing on. And then realize if you get the loan and you don't hire your people back until mid-June, maybe, let's say worst case, you don't reopen until June. You got the loan May 1st. You don't reopen until June 15th. If you don't spend the money, just give it back. And it's a 1% working capital line of credit, if you want to think of it like that. I think it's a really good idea to get the loan May 1st and just have the cash, especially if you're in a position where you are concerned about availability of cash or you'd like to have a little bit more buffer there. Go ahead and get it. It's a 1% loan, and if you don't spend it, you can always give it back. It's not forgivable, of course, if you don't spend it in the 8 weeks. But if the money's still sitting there in an account and you haven't spent it, 1% interest, if you get a $100,000 loan and you carry it for a year, it costs you $1,000 to have an extra $100,000 in cash sitting there. If you scale that situation up or down, depending on your situation, I think that could be a really good strategy. Let's see, what else do we have going here? Dr. Griffin, trouble downloading 10 vital steps. Is it not allowing you in there? So when you get here on this page, you can do it one of two ways. You can either do it with an email. We tried to be fancy with this time and offer people a Facebook opt-in too, but maybe we've created more trouble. Anyway, if you can opt in with email or you can opt in with Facebook. If you click here on Facebook, it's going to sync up with your Facebook if you're logged in, and it'll let you do it that way too. If you want to just input your email manually, still not able to download the 10 steps. Are you not getting the email? Are you seeing, so you come here, you enter your name, you enter your email, and then what happens? Are you getting, so you opt in, and then you need to click here on download the 10 steps, and this will send you an email. You'll get an email in your inbox that says download the 10 vital steps to thriving during difficult times. So that will come through. If you have a blue check mark, you're not even getting to that page. So if you click on that link there, what happens, Andy? Do you get to this page if you click on that link? It's not clicking. I wonder if Zoom is stripping out they're not letting it be clickable here. Doesn't go anywhere. Well, okay, so if you do this, go to your browser, go to an internet browser and type this in. You have to put it in the chat. I thought I was putting it in the chat. Yeah, just go to your web browser and type in 10stepstothrive.com. Yeah, and you'll get this in email. It's going to be posted to our website. All this is going to be really available. 10stepstothrive.com is the website. If the link clicking isn't working, my apologies on that. I thought you could send a link here in Zoom. They had all that hacking stuff over the past few weeks. They may have tightened this all down so you can't send links anymore. 10stepstothrive.com. If you want to register for Ashley's webinar tomorrow, here's the link to do that. Dr. Griffin, I get to the download page, but it does not print. Well, lots of technical issues tonight. I'm sorry about that, folks. So you get to this page here, you get to the download page, and are you getting into here as well? Dana, it worked for Dana, no problem. Okay, and are you getting the blue check marks over here, Dr. Griffin? Do you have blue check marks next to the download the 10 steps report? The first two. Okay, perfect. If you got the first two done, then you will get this email in your inbox in a few minutes. This email will come into your inbox. If you have a blue check mark on the first two items here, then you will get this email in just a few minutes. And this will give you the link right here that you can click on to go. Cool. All right, so let's, Dana, you just got your SBA number. Does that mean I'll definitely get my money? So if you got your loan application number, then there's still an approval that comes after that. So the bank generally, within 10 days from that approval number, they're going to be in contact with you about signing the paperwork and originating the loan. SBA requires that you must originate the loan within 10 days from the approval. So there's a pretty tight timeline around that. So you should be expecting to get some stuff here very soon based around those regs. I'm not familiar with what the Irish gig is yet. Sorry. Dr. Dobry, seeing potential security risk ahead. I'm not sure what that's about. You probably have not typed in HTTPS, Dr. Dobry, on that link. Try typing in HTTPS there, and that should resolve that security issue for you. You might just be trying to go to the unsecure version of the site. The Irish jig. Okay, yeah. Very, very soon you'll be able to do the Irish jig there. Yep. I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to take everybody that's been in here tonight, and I am going to email out this slide right here with these links in email. So if you guys will hang out for just a couple minutes afterwards. Once this webinar ties up, I'll pull the attendance list down, and I'll send out this email right here with the links in an email so that I know that everybody can click on it. So I'll get that out here shortly to make sure we work around that. Dr. Dobry, it is HTTPS. It might be, sounds like you got some super tight security on your computer. I don't know why it would be throwing that security error for you there. But I promise you 10stepstothrive.com is our site right here that will take you in here. Connection is secure and everything's good to go. So I'm not sure why that's throwing that error for you, but could be different security settings on your end versus mine. Cool. What questions do you guys have? Biggest problems going on in your practice? Other than with my technology tonight of the links not clicking and the clicks not working, I'll send out that email here shortly. What problems can we brainstorm on here tonight? What problems are you all having in your practices that need some attention to work through? Yeah, tell me more about that, Dr. Short. What kind of step-by-step plan are you looking at with your team members? Yeah, Dr. Gans, when we return, there will be fewer patients looking for elective procedures, fewer patients with funds to pay since they were out of work. What are your thoughts? Yeah, I think there's going to be a couple scenarios there. We're not seeing any slowdown with our implant-focused doctors. Of course, they can't do the surgeries right now, but the number of consults they're getting have been pretty consistent. There was a little spike right when the virus hit about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and it's back down to a low average level right now. I don't think the large reconstructive implant stuff is going to take a big hit. A lot of that gets paid for out of 401k dollars, savings accounts and the like. General dentistry, elective procedures, cosmetic dentistry. Yeah, I think that there's going to be definitely a short-term gap in patients that are going for that work. I think there's a couple things that you need to focus on here. Let's start by getting into dental intel and looking at how many unscheduled treatment plans do we have. So if we come here and we look at, let me pull this slide up here so I can show you guys. Let's go. Here we go. All right. So if we come in here and we look at our dental intel data and we look at these reports. So the first place to start is to look at where is the opportunity at, Dr. Gans? If you've got a limited number of patients that are going to be able to pay, who's the most likely to be able to pay? How are we gonna build up and offset? Because I think hygiene is going to be really slow when you come back in too. I think it's unlikely that there's a lot of pent-up demand. Who are the preferred patients we need to be looking at? Who are patients that have historically been our spenders, if you want to call them that, more likely to do elective case work? Preferred patients. Also, who are our high-risk patients, 60+ years old, that maybe we need a different message around, or maybe we want to exclude them? Who are our hygiene patients that had a higher than average dollar per visit, right? Right here in our hygiene plan, how are we looking at our hygiene patients? We're going to want to segment out, and if we're appointing hygiene, we're going to want to prioritize those that have a higher per patient visit value, right? Who's on the unscheduled list for restorative work that's already verbally accepted it, but hasn't moved forward? Who are our worst patients? Who's our abandoned patients that have canceled appointments? And this comes back to the hidden hygiene tax. How do we put our patients into an ABC bucket so that we're getting our A patients in when they want? We're putting some restrictions around B patients, and then C patients that chronically no-show and cancel and change appointments last minute. We've got to manage that. How are we going to manage that? So yeah, I think the answer, Carrie, is in the data. Looking and really breaking down your Dentrix EagleSoft Open Dental database and answering these questions from an analytical point of view will tell you about where and who you need to be plugging into those spots. RE, heavy dental insurance, they control price structure. They won't be increasing the fee allowances. Costs will be increasing. Yeah, definitely. If my patients no longer have insurance, this may actually be a good thing. Yeah, for sure. How can I afford to be the bank and help them? RE, we are doing just that. Our 6 steps to insurance independence is going to cover all that. It's going to cover, part of it is going to be a membership plan, but this is not a membership plan sales pitch. But it's going to be covered in there. Part of it is going to be how to break away from the insurance companies and do it in a way that financially makes sense. David, good time to drop Delta. Yeah, well, no better time than the present, maybe. But how can you phase out? How do you identify and start to make that transition? And then how do you shoulder up the patients that don't have insurance and attract them to your practice, right? Generally, insurance-driven practices haven't done a lot of marketing because they've relied on the insurance companies just to send them patients. 5 to 8% for marketing of collections is a lot cheaper than taking a 20 to 40% haircut right off the top when they negotiate your fees. That's the bottom line of it. Some are better than others. I understand all that, but paying 20 to 40% off the top for the insurance company to send you patients is really, really expensive. And oftentimes it gets kind of overlooked because I think it's a little bit easier and it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. Whereas when you're actively marketing, you have to sign the check. Let me say this a different way. If everybody in this country had to do what we do and sign a quarterly estimate check and send it into the IRS, there would be a radically different political system in this country. Instead, they rely on us employers to secretly withhold the money, and the employee never sees it, right? It just passes through, and the employee never has to sign that check. And it's a completely different mindset. So I think that's kind of the same mindset I see with insurances, is it often feels different because you never see the money when you give it up to the insurance companies, but yet when you're actively marketing, you have to sign the check. So yeah, the 6 steps to insurance independence, it'll be coming out here this month, and we'll be rolling that out here at this webinar in the future. So stay tuned for that. Dr. Dobry, 3 different browsers, same warning. Hang out for a second, Dr. Dobry. I'll send out the email with the link, and maybe that'll solve your problem with that security warning in your browser. Look for the email. I'll send it out here as soon as we're off the webinar tonight. I can't get the attendance list until I end the webinar. So as long as we still have questions coming in, then I'll keep them going here. Let's see. We got some comments in here. Dr. Short, there's all at home, making sure they get specific videos done, emails out to patients. Yeah. leveling up your team. Dr. Short, so looking at the 10-step guide here, if you want to get into step number 4, understanding your money funnel, this is going to be where it really starts to shine for your team. Getting them into the right mindset of this framework, getting them accustomed to looking at the numbers. I want to call out, I've seen a lot of this. I've seen management by spreadsheets. And what I mean by that is there's some consultants that build these elaborate spreadsheets and hand them to the doctor and they say, go do it. And the team, it alienates the team. They have a coup d'etat and they rebel. And then the doctor says, oh God, I can't do that. And they back away from their plans of trying to elevate their team. And it's not that elevating the team was a bad idea. It's that the consultant went about it in a very brash way that doesn't give the team the tools and the support they need to succeed. Listen, there's no people that work for you that wake up in the morning and go, I hope I do an awful job today and I hope I suck for this guy that's providing my livelihood and paying me a check. That just doesn't happen. They're operating the best they know how. And our job as the leaders of our company is just to arm them with more tools to go do their job better. If my people aren't doing a good job, it's my fault. It's my fault if my people aren't doing a good job. And I own that responsibility, just as each of you do as the owners of your practice. And if your people aren't doing what you want them to do, it's your job to go fix it. And getting them into the mindset and giving them the tools to arm them to go figure this out is critical. And doing it in a way that supports them, not in a way that dominates them, that just overwhelms them, because if they knew how to do it, they'd go do it. They need your help. So yeah, I think this step 4, getting them thinking about this workbook and this evaluation here, these 2 resources are going to be invaluable to you, Dr. Short, here looking at this. David, anybody receive funds from the EDL loan? Yes. I don't know about people that are here tonight, but I do have EDL confirmations of people that have applied. Yeah, hard to keep motivated because they're getting unemployment. And in some cases, Dr. Short, they're getting unemployment that's maybe more if they were an entry-level position with the $1,200 stimulus check. They're getting more money in April than they would have got working for you. And that's really hard to motivate for. You might want to think about A players. Who do you want to bring back? A players don't need motivation. If your people need motivation, generally that's really hard to fix. And I'm picking on your words here a little bit, but I just want to make sure I make this distinction. It's really hard to motivate people. People either are motivated or they're not. And you've probably seen this in your practice before. Once a week, you walk up to the front desk or you walk up and talk to Susie and you give them the old boot approach, right? The stick approach. And that motivates them temporarily, but then they fall back to kind of their default operating mode because they need constant motivation. And usually those people are not A players. There's going to be a lot of A players on the market when you open back up. A lot of A players on the market. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for you to put in your practice a tremendous team that is going to kick butt. And I would encourage you to, we'll have our hiring guide out here soon. I would encourage you to really think hard about your people and your A team. If you could only bring back 3 people, who would they be? 3 people, who would they be? And realize you may not want to bring back everybody on day 1. This may be a phased approach. We don't want to get in over our head with labor and overhead right off the bat. The PPP loan is there. That's great. But the PPP loan is a lifeline for the business. As much as the politicians have positioned the PPP process as a lifeline for the people, if they wanted a lifeline for the people, they would have mailed them a check directly, right? They sent them a check for $1,200. If the PPP was all about keeping everybody on board, and paying the people, they just would have sent them the checks directly. They sent the checks to the business because the politicians know if the business fails, everything fails. And this is a lifeline for the small business. Make sure that you're being very judicious with your cash. Back to the cash burn, understanding your expenses, your timelines. Again, if I told you this was going to be 6 months instead of 3 months, what decisions would that change? Let me say this a different way. One of the really smart guys that I follow says this: smart people make really stupid decisions. And here's proof. If I gave you the ability to undo any 3 decisions you'd ever made in your life, how much money would you have right now? And there's your proof. There's your proof that really smart people can make really stupid decisions. And it's true for all of us. How much more money would we all have if we could undo any 3 decisions we'd ever made? We all get caught up and we do things that maybe don't make sense. And we just need to be very thoughtful about how we're going to go about this as we start this thing back up. Be judicious with our cash. Make sure we're bringing back our A players, and we're making really smart decisions. Looks like I got a question from David as well as from Dr. Gans around PPE. Yeah, 25 grand in masks and gowns and booties and all this stuff. No, insurance, I doubt that insurance is going to compensate for any of that. I doubt they're going to add a new code for reimbursement on that. There's likely to be a shortage. We're going to have next week, I got a really cool thing that's going to sterilize masks. I'm going to show you guys next week what that is. It's a new product. They've tested it. It's got a engineering and a scientist have stamped it and approved it that it will kill the coronavirus. So I'm going to show you guys that next week. I think that is a $1,000 or whatever it costs, a small fix for what mass N95 masks cost. And I'll show you guys some other tools, some other really cool stuff. I'm going to show you some stuff for purification and filtration in your office that does not break the bank. What we need to focus on here is reasonable amounts of safety that are going to instill confidence in our team and in our patients. And we need to do it without dipping into our retirement accounts to make it happen. And I think some of the stuff I'm seeing right now is getting kind of crazy. I mean, I saw Pennsylvania for a while was requiring negative pressure operatories. And that's some politician making a knee-jerk reaction that doesn't make any sense. And Susan, I've heard of dentists adding PPE fee for each patient. It kind of reminds me of when you go to the mechanic shop and they have the line item for additional disposables. And you ask what it is, and they say, well, that covers our paper towels and our grease and our brake cleaner and yada, yada, yada. Susan, I think that probably comes back to the kind of practice you run. I think if you're running a very general insurance-driven practice, maybe you're in a retail location. I'm just making some generalizations here. That may be okay. I'm also thinking of some practices that we work with that are very high-end, boutique, high level of service, and they would probably not want to add an itemized charge to the bill. It would probably be better for them to simply increase their fees by 2% or whatever the number is, 1%, 0.5%, to get the same outcome without adding an itemization onto the bill. And that may be something you want to consider. Do we really need to itemize this, or do we just need to raise our prices 10% and do 20% less work, or whatever those numbers work out to be, depending on your area, your type of practice, where your fees are at right now. That may just be the real answer, is just to bump your fees a little bit and let it all kind of flush out there. And that way nobody feels like you're dinging them for you know, I don't know about you, but when I go get, well, I've driven an electric car for the past 5 years now. So in my past life, when I would go to the shop and, you know, you get that $18 charge at the bottom for towels and all that crap. And it was like, guys, why don't you just charge me $59 for an oil change instead of $49? And then I don't have to feel like I'm getting dinged. It's the Amazon concept. Free shipping. Don't ding me for shipping. It's free. It's part of the value prop. David, are face shields going to be mandatory going forward? Your guess is as good as mine, man. I think that face shields may be mandatory. They may not. But that may be part of the marketing strategy that you want to roll out to ensure that patients are absolutely feeling safe when they think about, do I want to call Dr. David and go into his practice? I think the legislature and the regulations and the clinical side of this PPE stuff is second chair to the marketing side. That's how I'm thinking about this. We've got to make sure, because if the patients don't believe you're safe, they're not even going to call your office. It doesn't matter if you've got a negative pressure office and you spend $1 million on safety. If you don't market this thing the right way, your patients are going to go, I'm not going back to that guy. I'm going somewhere else. So we have to look at the regulations and the clinical side and the virology side and all that stuff. But ultimately, we've got to make sure our patients and staff understand how this is going to affect. They got to get the why. So whether they're mandatory or not, I think that's an inferior question, if you will, to do I need to have face shields if I want to get patients in the chair? And I think the answer in the short term is probably yes to that. Do I need to make a big stinking deal out of face shields and UV purification and HEPA filtration and all this stuff that I'm going to show you next week? Do I need to make a big hoopla out of it? Because that's what patients are going to need. They're going to need the warm fuzzy. You're going to take care of them. Questions, thoughts, feedback. Next week, we're going to talk about the PPE side a little bit. I'm going to show you some cool stuff. Next week, I'm going to show you the greatest discovery in the history of humanity. I'm pretty excited about it. A new slide deck. And again, it's going to be pretty short. I like to start off every presentation with a little runway. I did my Alaskan fishing trip this week. I did problem predicament last week. I'm going to do this greatest discovery next week. And I think you're going to really enjoy it. Oftentimes, we just need a little bit of relatability in kind of what we need to be doing and where we need to be going to understand kind of how we need to think about it. So I think you'll like it. What other questions do we have? We're at 9:30 Eastern time here. It's like we've answered 17 Q&As and gosh, 50 questions here in the chat window. We can call it here at 9:30 unless there's any last folks that want to pop in here and ask some questions. Anything we haven't answered tonight? Anything that's burning a hole in your head? Yeah, thanks, Neil. Appreciate you coming on here and taking your evening to listen to me banter a little bit. Carrie, yeah, thanks to you as well. Yeah, David, I think that's great. I think that's great. And I think as the testing becomes more prevalent, antibody testing, of course, in the future, that's all going to be great communication. Dr. Griffin had a great idea earlier. Let's take a picture in all our enhanced PPE gear. Show patience you care. That's all this is. You've shown, everybody on here has shown your patients you've cared for them. That's why you have your own practice, because you do things your own way and you've done things differently. All this is a different way of doing things differently than you did things last month, right? That's all this is. We just have to make sure that when we reopen, we're reopening under a post-COVID mentality. And I think everybody here is on board that train and is gonna do the work to make sure that you're positioned to come out of this thing. Great. Hey, yeah, thanks, Brian. Next week, looking forward to it already. Awesome. Let's call this here. Again, I'm going to shoot an email out within 5 minutes with this slide on it right here. So if you want to register for Ashley's webinar tomorrow, if you want to get the 10 Steps to Thrive guide, or if you're a current client, just hit reply to my email and shoot me an email. Dr. Griffin, I already see you emailed me. That's fantastic. I'll get that rocking and rolling. If you're a current client and you want to start getting into some of this stuff, you want to see what we're already doing for you, whatever it is, just hit reply. Just tell me where you're currently at right now in your practice. So I'll get this out shortly. Thanks, guys. Appreciate every one of you, and keep moving forward.